Good morning. If you would please, would you join with me on the 23rd Psalm? Now, I'm going to give you a couple of different ways to do it. First of all, you can use the Bibles in the seat backs in front of you. Secondly, you can use a mobile device. Thirdly, and this is how we're going to go through the message today, inside of your bulletin or your program, you're going to see the 23rd Psalm printed out. I'd encourage you to get that out. And then finally, maybe you're just not a writer, it's going to be on the screens. I mean, we got no excuse today. 9 different ways to follow along. If you're joining us online, Facebook Live, however it may be, we're glad you're with us as we continue in our series this morning entitled Songs of Summer. Before we get into the message, we have one more announcement to make. So July 15th, we're going to have a pretty exciting event coming up. If you've been a part of Spring Lake for any amount of time, you know that we celebrate baptisms. Baptism in Scripture is that point where people choose, the way the Bible says it, is they choose to go from darkness into His glorious light. It's that moment when you say, I'm standing with Christ. As a child, your parents may have taken that step, and we celebrate that. They wanted you raised with a knowledge of who Christ was and in the church. But when you look in Scripture, it's what's called a believer's baptism. It's that point where you as an adult take the step of faith for yourself and make the proclamation for yourself. We've done that in services here before in our Sunday mornings. But now with 2 locations and the multiple services, what we want to do is pull it together into a one-time event. And on July 15th, at 5 o'clock downtown, we're going to have a baptism celebration. It'll be a baptism service with testimonies, and then we're going to eat. That's always a good thing. We're going to eat together. So I'd encourage you, put it on your calendar, July 15th, 5 o'clock. You'll see more information in the newsletter coming out this week and in the bulletins and stuff in the weeks ahead. Now, as we jump into the 23rd Psalm and to really get the feel for what the author was talking about, what David was talking about when he wrote it, I want to start by asking you a question. And that question is simply this: have you ever had a really good day? I mean, not just like an average good day, but a really good day. Maybe you're sitting outside and it's not 97 degrees out. Maybe you're by a campfire, or you're sitting in your living room, and you just stop and you think back about the events of the day, or you're just kind of reminiscing, and you're going, yeah, things are good. Are there problems? Sure. Are there going to be more problems tomorrow? Probably. Are you facing some things? Yes, but you can stop and go, you know what? Life's pretty good. Last weekend, Gina and I, my wife and I, got away. Went up to Door County. Now, when I moved to Green Bay, right before I moved to Green Bay, I had some friends who were from this area, and they kept pushing 2 things on me that I thought, okay, you guys are kind of overselling. But they were dead on. Those 2 things were Door County and Prime Quarter. Can't go wrong with either. But last Friday, Saturday, and we came back on Sunday, but we had 2 absolutely perfect days. 70 to 72 degrees, slight breeze, no clouds, no rain, no bugs. The kids are old enough that they were able to stay at home and take care of things on their own. We didn't get one phone call about something on fire or blowing up. I mean, everything just seemed to fall into place. All diets were off, lots of ice cream eaten. Everything was just great. Could there have been problems? Yeah. Were there things we could have argued about? Absolutely. We do things differently. But in the moment, we just stopped and said, man, this is perfect. It gave us the chance to really breathe in the present. We took the time to dream about God's guidance for the future and what it could look like. And then we took some time really and just reflected on God's goodness, His provision, and His protection over the past. It was good. It's those moments when you stop and go, okay, life is doable. When I read the 23rd Psalm, and you read how David addresses things, we come to this realization in this context that David realizes the blessing of life. Now, I've taken the 23rd Psalm. It's a little bit different language. We're going to use what's called the King James Version of the Bible. Many of you may have grown up reading this or hearing this in church, so this is what we're going to read. And I'd like us, if we would please, to read this together. Like I said, on your programs, on the screens, will be the King James Version. Let's start on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The coolest thing that jumps out to me as I read this is remembering that the author who wrote this, we know David as the king, we know David as the Goliath slayer, but if we go back and we look at David's first profession, David was a shepherd. Here's a shepherd writing a psalm from the viewpoint of a sheep. He's realizing that even though he's a shepherd over these sheep, and when you look at the big picture of life, we're the sheep. And we've got one great shepherd. He understands the shepherd as a provider, protector, the wisdom that's needed by a shepherd for the sheep. We'll look at that in a little bit. But there's also something else that we have to realize, just as David did, and it's this: we're not all that. We may think we're pretty smart. We may think we've got it all together. You may be smarter than your boss. You may be smarter than your kids. You may be smarter than your spouse. You may be smarter than your pastor. You may be smarter than your friends. But when it comes to the shepherd, and when we go and communicate in all the wisdom we have, it still sounds the same. Bah. We need our shepherd. No matter how much we think we have together, we need our shepherd. And here's what I'd like to do. We're going to read through the 23rd Psalm again, not out loud together, but as we do, I'd love for you to underline all the parts on your program that talk about what the shepherd does for us, what he as the shepherd does for us, the sheep. It says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still, another translation says quiet waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for he is always with me. His rod and his staff comfort me. He prepares the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. He anoints my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in his house forever. That's what the shepherd does for us. Now we're going to go back through the same passage, and everything that talks about what we as sheep either do or should expect, I'd like you to circle it. On the screens, it's going to show up as the brighter word or the highlighted word. But I want us to compare what the shepherd does for the sheep and who the sheep are to the shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me, verse 2, I am to lie down in green pastures. I am to follow beside quiet waters. I, verse 3, am to be restored. I am to follow the shepherd, the sheep follow the shepherd in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, here's our part, I fear no evil. For he is with me, thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, I am to be comforted. Verse 5, I think we like this one, I am to eat at the table in the presence of my enemy. I am to be anointed. My cup runneth over. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. It's pretty cool. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I dwell in his house. It's pretty clear when you read it from the viewpoint of a shepherd and a sheep, we get to enjoy a lot of benefits if we will. And the shepherd does the hard work, the heavy lifting. Now, with that recognition, with recognizing our role, our place as the sheep, God's role, God's place as the shepherd, let's read and break down the 23rd Psalm. The first thing, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That summarizes the rest of this psalm. I shall not want. Another translation says, I lack nothing. The most un-American passage in the Bible. I shall not want. That's the secret to it all. I lack nothing. I don't need a thing. I have what I will need. It's a statement of contentment. It may not be all my ego wants. It may not be all that my eyes want. It may not be all the fun stuff that I see everyone else getting to do. But the Lord is my shepherd. I'm good. The secret is not getting suckered into the want. Not getting sucked into what you don't have that you want. And it can show up in so many different ways. A few years ago, I was living in Florida still. I was playing in a softball tournament. It was an international tournament. And we were playing a team from Puerto Rico. Pretty close game, and then we realized this pitcher can't hit the broadside of a barn. That's a southern term if you haven't heard that before. But he couldn't pitch a strike for anything. So we get up, and he walks 3 or 4 guys in a row, just back-to-back pitches. He realizes he can't pitch. So what he does is he starts enticing our players. You get up, I bet you can't even swing a bat. I bet you can't hit this. Ball. I bet you're afraid to swing the bat. I bet you won't even take a chance. Ball. I bet you couldn't hit it out of the infield if it was perfect. Ball. Take your base. I bet, and then he starts talking about your mom. Ball. I bet we could whip you guys. I'll meet you in the park. He's calling this out. I'll meet you in the parking lot after this game. Ball. He just continually walks people. Do you know what happened, though? He got in enough people's head that they started swinging. They got suckered into the want. Not something they needed to do, but they got suckered into the want. It could be a sale. It could be a new tool. It could be a new dress, a suit, shoes. It could be new technology. It can be fill in the blank. The Lord is my shepherd. I'm good. I have all I need. One writer said, I shall not want expresses or is an affirmation that my life will not be controlled by wanting all the time. Always wanting things is a miserable but common way to live. It's also expressed in the 10th commandment given by Moses in the Old Testament. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or husband. You shall not covet their male or female servants, his ox or his donkey, his riding mower or his pickup truck, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Verse 2. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. I love the fact that the first thing David points out is how God blesses, provides, and gives us a way to rest. Anxiety is an expensive habit, and it might be worth it if it worked, but it doesn't. Worry never brightened a day, cured a disease, or even solved a problem. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He maketh me lie down in green pasture. Food and water are both necessities, and sometimes we will walk right by them to go by something that looks more exciting. That's why it doesn't say the shepherd suggests that we lie down in green pastures or tries to highly motivate us. It says he makes us lie down in green pastures. If you're at a point in life where you feel like nothing is moving and no doors are opening, stop and lie down in the grass. Recognize the moment. He may be making you rest. Not always my forte. Some people, when it comes to tasks or projects, they're like tinkerers. They can have a project and work on it for 27 years, and they're just fine with that. I struggle with that. I'm not good at resting or seeing the quiet waters. I think the rapids look pretty exciting. I'm that sheep who's going to probably jump in the wrong place. Gina and I bought a fixer-upper for a house, and it's fun most of the time to work on. Every once in a while, though, the patient goes out the window. Stop and enjoy the moment. A few years ago, I came home from work, about 4 years ago, and I was frustrated, I was uptight, and I was saying, this isn't working, and that person, I don't know how that role is going to work, and we can't find someone for this role. And one of my daughters said, Dad, you've been here for 5 days. Give it some time. I wanted to push ahead of what the shepherd was doing. And the shepherd was saying, I'm going to make you lie down in green pastures. I'm going to lead you beside the still waters. And I wouldn't trade where the shepherd has led for anything. And I think if we were honest for just a moment, all of us have had those moments when we're saying, God, why didn't that door open? Or why can't this happen? Or why isn't that person available? And you're either going to look back or you can look back and say, oh yeah, I needed to lie down for a bit. I needed to be led where I was supposed to go. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I had a pastor that I worked with when I was younger. His name was Roy Harless. Still have the utmost respect for the guy. He got me when I was young and naive and full of fire, and he used to tell me all the time, he would say, don't be driven, be led. And I'd respond, I stay driven because there's nowhere to park. He'd say, no, don't be driven. You'll go right off the cliff. Be led. Sit back and see where the shepherd is leading. Verse 3, he restoreth. Another translation says, he refreshes my soul. Weariness pulls you down. Self-reliance misleads you. Disappointments can discourage you. Anxiety plagues you. Guilt can consume you. But Calvary is the compost of it all. Realize what Christ has done for you. Realize the life that we have because of Jesus. And allow the shepherd to refresh your soul. He leadeth me, the next part, he leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Fear is worry's big brother. Fear can be crippling, especially when you don't know what's going on. And when you talk about going through a valley, for a sheep, it's a very, very unsafe place, a very sketchy place to be. Sheep are not gifted or equipped to defend themselves well. They don't have sharp claws or ninja skills. When they go through a valley, they are vulnerable. And if a wolf or a bear or a lion is up on top of that hill, they are wide open for attack. If there's a rock slide or there has been and the ground is shaky underneath them, they can't get out of there in a hurry. That's why David writes that the shepherd is with us even in the valley. How do you know the safety of the valley? Because the shepherd goes through first. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because he's with us. You don't know where the bandits are. You don't know where the wolves are. You don't know when the next rock slide could be. All you see are the shadows from the hills on both sides. Some of you may be in that place right now. You're looking at life, you're looking at the challenges ahead, and you see the other side, and you see the valley or the opening on the other side, but all you see right now is the valley you have to face and the fear that goes with the shadows. I want to remind you, the shepherd is with you. The Lord is your shepherd. You shall not want. You're good. He's with you. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. It's interesting that comfort would come from both the rod and the staff. They have two different purposes. They're for protection and correction, and we need both. Very seldom do we properly get in line when we set our eyes on something that we want. It takes both protection and correction to keep us in line and realize the blessing of the shepherd. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. And this is a picture of a sheep eating. As a sheep, we look and we see green fields, there's plenty to eat, and we're ready to run headlong into it. Did you ever think that maybe the green grass is there because the animals that live in that field are the ones that eat sheep? The grass isn't always greener on the other side. The shepherd goes before the sheep enter a field. The shepherd is looking for a fox's den or a wolf's den. He's looking for where bears may hibernate. He's looking for where poisonous snakes could be in the grass. He's looking for crevices and holes where a sheep would fall in and break its leg. He's looking for poisonous plants because sheep aren't the pickiest of eaters. The shepherd goes before you and prepares the table even in the presence of your enemies. Realize you're not in this alone. Some of the best untouched ground isn't the best place to go until the shepherd approves it. And you may be looking at it going, but it's so green and it's ready. Let the shepherd set the table for you. It may not be the right time yet. Let him go before you and clean out what needs to go. Lie down in the green grass. Recognize the still waters and follow where he leads. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Both of these are pretty cool. I'm going to start with the second one first. You see, in the time frame this was written, when a dinner would be had, everyone was given a cup, the chalice. And your cup would be on the table, and when it was filled, you would drink, you'd enjoy the meal, you'd enjoy everyone else who was at the party. But when your cup was empty and your host did not refill it, it meant it was time for you to go. You may clang your cup on the table because you're not ready to go yet, but when they don't refill it, that's their hint that, buddy, you've overstayed your welcome. If the host came and filled the cup halfway or filled it to a certain mark or even full, that meant the dinner is still on, the conversation's still good, let's hang around a little while longer. But when they would take that cup and pour it to overflowing, it meant they saw your being there as a celebration, as a blessing. The party is still on. We love your presence. David said that the king, the true shepherd, looks at us and doesn't just fill our cup a little bit, like I'll be around for a while, then I'm going to kick you out. He doesn't fill it to the top and say there's a limit. He fills it to overflowing. He celebrates you. He loves your presence. He loves you as a sheep. My cup overflows. I'm not alone. I'm being celebrated. The part before that, he anoints my head with oil. And there's several things that go with this word picture. First of all is David, who's been anointed king. Oil is poured on his head in the Old Testament. It signifies the Holy Spirit. But as a shepherd's view, a shepherd used to put oil in the sheep's, first of all, in their hair, because they get stuck in thickets and everything else with their big billowy hair, and it would help them slide through. But there's another word picture here that I think is really important for us to grasp, and it's that sheep would bend down, they eat the grass, and then there are these things in the grass called sand fleas. And the sand fleas would make their way up into the sheep's nose, ears, and eyes, but especially the nose. And they would burrow into the nose and begin to lay their eggs. Doesn't it make you just want to scratch your face? Sheep are incapable of doing that. No one can see it. The shepherd doesn't see these sand fleas, but when they either swarm or when they come up through the grass and begin to burrow in the nose, the sheep begins to lose its mind. It says they begin shaking their head. They'll actually bang their head against a tree, hit their head on the ground, trying to break these sand fleas loose. They'll begin to spin around. They basically lose control, freaks the other sheep out. But when the oil is added to the sheep's head, and you can Google this and look all this up, it's still done. There's actually a salve in the ointment, herbs that they put in this oil that keep the sand fleas off and keep them out of the nose. One person I read that studies shepherds says when the nose flies hover around the flock, some of the sheep become frantic with fear and panic in their attempts to escape their tormentors. They'll stamp their feet erratically and race from place to place in the pasture, trying desperately to elude the flies. Some may run so much that they'll drop from sheer exhaustion. Others may toss their heads up and down for hours. They'll hide in any bush or woodlands. Some occasionally will refuse to eat at all. All this excitement distracts the rest of the flock. Ewes and lambs rapidly lose condition and begin to drop weight. Ewes will stop milking. The lambs will stop gaining weight. Some of the sheep will be injured as they run headlong in panic into shrubs and trees. Others are blinded. Some are even killed. But what a transformation that's made when the oil is added. Once the oil has been applied to the sheep's head, there is an immediate change of behavior. Gone was the aggravation, gone the frenzy, gone the irritability and the restlessness. Instead, the sheep would start to feed quietly again, then soon lie down in peaceful contentment. I can see a wolf coming. I know what a bear looks like. I got an idea what a lion looks like. Haven't like met one face to face, but it's these little gnats that get under our skin that can annoy the mess out of life. Nobody else may be able to see it. It may not seem like a big deal to anyone else. But when we try to handle it ourselves, we find ourselves banging our head against a wall, running around frantically, trying to take care of it on our own. Remember, we're sheep. It's the shepherd who anoints our head with oil. It's the shepherd who can even take care of the little things. This is too small to bother God with. Bring the fleas to him. Whatever it may be, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. I'm good. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. Another translation says, pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Goodness to provide, mercy to pardon. And I love the word picture there of it's not just following us, it's pursuing us. It's on our heels. It's there and available for us. Why? Because we need it. Isaiah 53 and verse 6 says, we all like sheep have gone astray. Each one of us has turned to our own way. And the Lord has laid on him, the great shepherd, on Christ, the iniquity of us all. Surely goodness and mercy shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We're in the house of the shepherd. We're sheep. How many of you have sheep in your house? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, that's what I thought. One. Liar. How many of we don't keep sheep and we don't think of them as a pet, but what does it say that the shepherd does for us? He brings us into his presence. He brings us into his care in his home. The Lord is our shepherd. We shall not want. At the opening of this series, I gave you some challenges. Asked you to be ready for some things, and I'm going to bring those back up and specifically for the 23rd Psalm. The first thing I asked you to do was be ready to stretch. And here's how I want you to stretch at the 23rd Psalm. I want you to lay down and relax. I want you to recognize the green pastures and the quiet waters. For July 4th, I want you to have one word be your theme. Ready? Write it on your fridge, write it on a sticky note, put it on your window or your mirror. Here it is. Bah. You want me to spell it for you? I want you to enjoy the moment. There's going to be plenty of running around to do, but I want you to be able to stop and recognize the Lord is my shepherd. I'm good. I shall not want. I've been blessed. Stretch, and that's a stretch because so many of us charge and run so hard when we need to learn to follow. Secondly, the second challenge was to be real. And when it comes to being the sheep, I need us to do just that. Be real. Recognize who we are, recognize our limitations, and recognize our need for a shepherd. Be real. I'll go first. I'm selfish. Bah. We do what we do. Why? Because we want what we want. Let's be real with ourselves and recognize our need for a shepherd. The next one, this one may sound strange, but I want us to raise our level of expectation of the shepherd. Raise our level of expectation of the shepherd. How do we do that? Trust the shepherd. Trust the shepherd. Let him deal with the gnats, even the little things. We'll run to God when we see a bear or a wolf or a lion or a bandit. We'll run to God when there's a cobra in the way. But how about the little things? Trust the shepherd. Raise your expectation of the Lord as our shepherd. We shall not want. The next thing I want to challenge you to is refocus. This was in this opening message. Refocus. Stop chasing and start following. Listen for and look to the shepherd. Know the shepherd's voice. Jesus said it this way. First of all, Jesus spelled out that there are sheep and there are goats. To be a goat is a bad thing. To be a sheep is to be one of his. And what did Jesus say? My sheep know my voice. Refocus. Learn the voice of the shepherd. Get into the Bible. Know what it says. The leading of God is not always based on how we feel. Know the voice of the shepherd. Refocus. Stop chasing. And then we can follow. So last week, don't know what overcame me. We went and got a puppy. Puppy is, first of all, we thought it was like this quiet, docile little dog. Found out it was sick. Now it's getting better, and it's not a quiet, docile little dog anymore. This dog, first of all, it's one of those that when you're walking, it follows so close on your heels that when you turn around, you trip over it. And then you let it outside, and it chases the squirrel, and then it chases the bird, and then it chases the chipmunk. It runs all over the place. It doesn't know our voice yet. It has no idea of commands. For some reason, it is scared to death of doors. So you let the dog out, and you're like, come on, Sadie. And she just sits there and stares at the door. So you got to pick up, carry the dog outside, put it down. The dog does what it needs to do, chasing squirrels, birds, and chipmunks. Then you, come on, Sadie. You open the door and the dog just sits there and stares at the door. So then you got to carry the dog back inside. And today, right before church, I thought, I'm letting the dog out. It's early, but I got to get going. I let Sadie out. I thought, maybe this time, open the door. Come on, Sadie. And she runs the other way as fast as she can. So I'm chasing the dog down. The dog doesn't know our voice. The dog doesn't realize that what we're doing for it is for its good. I'm carrying that dog quite a bit. Pray for me. It's a character building moment. But the dog, just like the sheep, needs to learn the shepherd's voice and why. It doesn't need to be afraid of its own shadow. It'll be taken care of. It doesn't need to worry about eating. We'll provide its food. The challenge for us, refocus. Know the voice of the shepherd. And that leads to the last challenge we had is read. Maybe you haven't been following along in Psalms, 2 Psalms a day, 1 in the morning, 1 at night, or both at the same time. And watch how 1 or 2 may jump out. You may read 10 or 20 or 25. Some of the Psalms get a little longer. Some of them you can read in, honestly, 15 seconds. And you'll read, and something may not jump out, or one little part will jump out. But give the shepherd a chance to speak. And he speaks through his word. The Lord is our shepherd. We shall not want. I'd like us to close by all together reading the 23rd Psalm one more time. Ready? The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.